Not really, yes, but mostly
Not
philosophy and
yeah, philosophy. Yeah. So yeah, let's start, Akashdeep, and I think people might ask some questions after your PPTs, and then you can answer those.
okay. So first of all, thank you everybody for joining. Can you guys see my slide?
Yes, Akash, we can
Yes, we
see it.
can.
Amazing. Okay, so before I begin, like shout out to my friends Rahul, Vahini, Anam, who have taken all the pains to join my talk. I don't know why they did, but I'm grateful anyway. So uh, this talk is going to be mostly about my own experiences applying for higher studies, my own experiences living in a foreign country, and my own experiences trying to get the most out of my film at IIIT. So this talk is not going to be about teaching you how to prepare for GRE, how to prepare for TOEFL, because there are like tens of thousands of resources available online, which are much better than what I could tell you. So and I would like to finish this early so that you guys can ask more of your questions. So before we begin, I'd just like to tell you something about myself. So I joined IIIT in 2014, and at that time, EC we had only my batch was a third EC batch, so no EC batch had graduated yet, and there were like a bunch of question marks about how the program is going to turn out to be, how are the placements going to be, who's the faculty teaching all these courses. And before I got admitted to IIIT, I already had gotten an admission offer from NIT Bhopal, which is my home city. So I was kind of confused which to join. So my first day of NIT Bhopal was 30th July, and also my first day of IIIT had asked me to report on 30th July for my admission. So so what's like 6 years ago, almost around this week is the first time when I came to IIIT to complete my admission procedure. And my dad was of the view that IIIT has a lot of very good, young, and hungry faculty. And over time, like this feeling that like the whole energy that young people bring into any institution is always great, and over time this could really benefit IIIT. And I think me and everybody in my batch, we kind of took a leap of faith and we joined IIIT, because obviously there was nothing to make our decisions off of. Now obviously you can see all our alumni, all the placement stats and everything, and you can make very informed decisions. But in those days it was mostly a leap of faith. After finishing my PhD, after finishing my undergrad, I got a direct PhD offer in UCLA. And I also got admission offers from University of Washington, Seattle, University of California, San Diego, and University of Florida, which are among top 50 universities in the world. And during my undergrad, as Pallavi ma'am said, I was the coordinator of the Student Senate. I was deputy convener of placement team. I was also involved in the mentor review board, and I was the coordinator of two student clubs. So I was kind of really active. But I'm going to also talk about the fact that I was in the initial phases of my education, I was not really active. I became active after a certain point of time. So this is me. And this is I'm actually getting ready for my freshers. So I think this was 14th or 16th August in 2014, and so by the looks of it, you would think that I would have I would be like studying hard or going to all classes and being very sincere, but that's not the case. And to prove that, I actually managed to fish out an email from Shitu ma'am in 2015. So in this email, if you look closely, you can see these are my attendance stats. So my attendance was kind of poor, and what's surprising to me is that my attendance was 50% in 2 classes. And this was mostly an artifact because these classes used to have quizzes, so you have to like kind of show up to give quizzes. Whereas most of the time, me and my friends, we used to just like hang in our rooms, play video games, watch videos, or like just go outside and do some fun activities. So during the initial phases of my undergrad, I was not like the most sincere student. And this brings me to what I'm going to talk about in the next 15 minutes. In the next 15 minutes, I would consider myself to be successful if I can convince you that you can do it, which means that you can you can go through this entire process of applying for higher studies, and you can be successful. Second thing, I want to convince a lot of people that it's never too late to start working towards your goals, which means that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm already in my 3rd year. I don't know if I have done enough. Should I apply? Should not apply? Should I take like work for 2 years, then come back? No, that's not the case. It's never too late. And number three, you have to be smart with your choices. Unless you're like the most hardworking person in the world, unless you're the most intelligent person in the world, you have to be smart about what choices you make, what trade-offs you make, and you cannot do everything in life. And you have to be sincere about what you want to do. You need to kind of know what you want to do, and you need to make your decisions based off all these things. So before we talk about anything else, let's just get this whole GRE, GPS, and your other score stuff out of the way. So in my GRE, I got 170 out of 117 quant. I got 150 out of 55 out of 117 my verbal, and my GPA was 8.81. So which is surprising to a lot of people, because people usually used to tell me that, you know, if you don't have like a 9.9 or 10 GPA, you can never get a direct PhD admission in a top university. However, I was second in my department, and my TOEFL score was 113 out of 120. So this brings me to what I want to talk about, which is that these scores do not matter as much as you think they do. So in India, we kind of grew up in this environment that we try to correlate everything with marks. So when we are in school, everybody's like, you know, you need to get like a 10 CGPA in 10th board. You need to get like 95% in your 12th board. You need to get like 200 out of 360 in IIT. You need to get like this rank. You need to get that rank to do something in life. However, in real life, everything is subjective. There's like nothing is as objective as we make it out to be in India. One example is that some of my friends who were preparing for GRE used to tell me that if you don't have a 330 plus score, you can never get an offer from a top universities. And now I am a testament to the fact my GRE score was 325 and I got 4 offers from top universities. So I'm not bragging, but I just want to let you know that these things do not matter as much as you think they do. And if you want to do well in higher studies, or if you want to have your applications being looked by top universities, these are the things that you need to do. So first, if you have a GRE score of 320 plus, or you have like at least 315, you are all set. You don't have to do anything about it. A lot of universities don't even care about your GRE score, and you have to be practical about it. So if you look through GRE syllabus has no correlation of what you're going to do in grad school. It's completely, and it's an arbitrary test, which I still have not been able to just justify to myself why it is taken in the first place. TOEFL, on the other hand, is a good test of how well you can talk, you can communicate in English. So, and basically TOEFL is the easiest exam. If you have gone through education in IIIT for 3 or more years, which is we use English for everything, you should be fine. You should be easily able to get a score of 105 or more. Third thing, which is kind of interesting, and that's you should be among the top 10 or 15% students in your batch, which is if you have like 50 students in your batch, you need to be like top 8, top 7 people. And if you write about this in your statement of purpose, these are the things that attract attention. To college somewhere in India, and they give like 10 CGPA to everybody. So that does not mean that they are better than somebody who gets a 8.5 in IIIT. So as a result, universities do not directly look at your absolute scores. I have talked to some people who work in admissions here, and they tell me that they have kind of a hierarchical list of all the universities in India, and that's what they base their decisions on. So for example, they know that now, obviously, they know that in IIIT-Delhi, the grading is kind of hard, and professors are it's very difficult to get like 10s in your classes. So they kind of base off their decisions on these things, and they know there are like some obviously XYZ colleges in India where everybody gets like 95%, 10 CGPAs and whatnot. So for them, these things carry very less weight. Next thing is that you need to have 3 very good letters of recommendation. By very good, I mean that these 3 letters of recommendation should be from professors who know you personally. So I can give you an example. If you go on a lot of websites, they'll tell you, if you want a letter of recommendation, just email the professor and tell him that, hey, I took your class in 2016 and I got A grades in one class, I got A+ in another, and I was wondering if you can write a letter for me. So you have already lost half the battle here. That's because you already know that the professor does not know you. So if the professor does not know you and you have to remind him of what you did, there is no way you can get a great letter of recommendation from that professor. In my case, all the 3 letter writers for me knew me personally. By knew me personally, they knew like a lot about what my goals in life are, and I had like spent a lot of time talking with them about my life in general and what I want to do later in life. And I think that was a very important factor in why I got all the decisions, accepted decisions in my higher studies applications, the numbers that I did, because I shared a very close relationship with all my letter writers. And this is something that a lot of people overlook. So people think that, if I have taken X amount of courses from some professor and have gotten A grades on all these courses, I'll get a great letter of recommendation. No. Why would a professor give you a great letter of, so take two cases. There's a student who has worked with a professor for 2 years, and that student has maybe like been second author in 2 papers for his lab. And then you have taken 4 courses and you have got an A+ on all his courses. Who do you think the professor would weight more? Obviously the student that he has personally supervised for a long period of time, because in that case the professor knows how well the student can do research and how well he can communicate all his skills and everything, and how well he can fit into a lab. So you have 4 years throughout your time at IIIT, and you have to make just good relationships with just 3 professors. It doesn't matter what they teach. So one of my letter writers was Professor Raj Iyer, and he's not even in the tech field. However, he was able to write about, I had TA'd for him for 4 semesters. I was also involved with him in a lot of management things, and he wrote about all these things. He wrote about my communication skills, on how well I can handle tough situations, stuff like that. And that's something that people in the UCLA, they liked. Also, if you want to go for PhD, right now you need to have research experience. Like there's no 2 ways about it. People from all, like so many universities, they come to IIIT during their summer internship and they try to get a paper out. So if you want to, and so you're going to be in IIIT for 4 years, and you should have some sort of research experience. I mean, maybe a first author paper, maybe like a second author, maybe like a third author, second author on like some PhD's paper. So you can obviously go to people and you can ask them to ask for help. And I'll discuss this more in my next slides. Next thing is good projects. By good projects, I mean that you're solving a real world problem, not like a problem that you just created, which exists on paper, but the problem is not really valid. By a good project, I mean, like recently I came to know about like a student from our university, from IIIT, who was working on these contactless payments in buses. And that is now being a trial run in I think one of the routes in Delhi, and it has garnered a lot of media praise and attention. So I think that's a great project, and if that guy wants to go for higher studies, he can write about these things. And people who read letters, applications here, they love stuff like that. So if you are solving a real life problem in a country like India that can solve some social, cultural, practical engineering, whatever issue, it's a huge plus on your resume, rather than just saying that I did this machine learning task and I was able to increase the accuracy by 2%. I mean, that's great, but there have to be there are certain things that you can do to further increase your increase the quality of your applications. Lastly, you need a solid statement of purpose. I would like to discuss this separately in one more slide, so I'll talk about it then. Having said all of that, a lot of students in IIIT consistently over-prepare. So I knew this guy in my batch, and he was preparing for GRE for almost like 2 years. So when I was in my 3rd semester, that's the first time I heard about GRE, and this guy already had a book, had like some GRE prep material, and he was preparing for like almost like on and off for 2 years. And I think that's, I mean, like, God bless him, he can do whatever he wants, but in my opinion, you have to be more practical and smart with these things. So GRE is not the end all be all. In my 2 years at UCLA, I have talked to people from so many different universities. No professor has ever said, I took this student only because he had a very high GRE score. In fact, a lot of professors don't even care about your GRE scores if your other things are really high. And so like in UCLA, your TOEFL score is a university-wide requirement. So you need a certain amount of marks on your TOEFL for your application to be considered. But GRE is kind of left on each department. So if a department wants, they can look at GRE. They obviously ask for the score, but it's not always necessary that it's a factor in your application decisions. But in India, people are just romanticize these scores, and they're like, if you get 330 in GRE, you'll have a great time. That's not the case. And I mean, honestly, you should like stay away from thoughts like these. So don't spend too much time preparing for GRE, at least. In my case, I used to study with my friend Anam. I think he's on the call, and he also got admitted to. He also got multiple admits, and we used to have this app, and we used to just like test each other on vocabulary on and off. but mostly we spent like maybe 2 or 3 weeks preparing before our exam dates, and we were like very casual about it, and both of us managed to do like quite well, I would say. So I think a lot of you can do it, and I would say that like I'm not the most intelligent person in the world. So even if you, so a lot of people in IIIT should be able to easily ace this exam without like a lot of preparation. You should like spend more time preparing your SOP, trying to get some research experience, trying to work on projects, trying to like, make these relationships with professor than like just rote learning GRE. TOEFL is even easier. TOEFL, you'll probably need like 3 to 7 days, depending upon what your communication skill level is. In my case, I prepared about like, I would say 4 to 5 days before my exam. And it's like very simple. You just like, they tell you something, you write it down, you answer questions. And it's like, if you can talk to somebody in English without much hassle, you should be able to do TOEFL with relatively ease. Next, one question a lot of you asked was about scholarships. So a lot of students said, how do we fund our studies? So this is like a very subjective question, and like the amount of money you like the way you can fund your education also depends upon the university you end up in. So in my case, during the first year of my PhD in 2018, I got the UCLA ECE Department Fellowship. So this is like, this fellowship pays great, and it's like one of the best things. And after that, I'm being funded by the research grants. So your advisor in a PhD, he or she typically writes these research grants, and they get accepted like to organizations like a National Science Foundation, or like maybe like to commercial companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and they accept these grants, and you basically collaborate with them over a project, and they fund your PhD research, and they also fund your lab with like equipment and all this stuff. A lot of students apply for these commercial scholarships like Microsoft, Facebook, IBM. They have like their own PhD fellowship program. So you apply for that. There's like a whole application process that you have to go through. It's kind of like applying for higher studies, and if you get selected, they fund your education. Also at UCLA, I've seen there are like a few fellowships, but I find it very strange. Those fellowships are only open to IIT students. So it literally says that for Indian students from IIT, and I like that just like kind of blows my mind. Since I'm not from IIT, I would say it feels weird. Like, like they are. Everybody's from India, but they just give preference to somebody from the college that they are from. And I mean, it's obviously set up by somebody who was from IIT, so I don't blame him. He wanted to help students from his alma mater, and I hope if students from IIIT, they get successful in life, maybe become like billionaires and trillionaires, then we can also set up these fellowships which say only open to IIIT students, nobody else. We don't care. If you're from IIIT, you get this funding. If you're not, then God bless you. Bye-bye. Next, coming to cost of attendance. So in UCLA, the master's program roughly costs around $31,000, which is like about 23 lakh rupees in like today's exchange rate. And so this is per year. So if you spend 2 years doing your master's, you double this amount. So it's like what, 46 lakh rupees. This is just your tuition. However, in UCLA, the advantage is that we follow a quarter system. So we have like 4 quarters: fall, winter, spring, and summer. And students can take 3 or 4 courses every quarter. So I had a friend this year, and he finished his entire master's in just 9 months. So he was able to just pay 23 lakh rupees, and he got his master's done, which is not too bad comparing the fact that the fees has increased in a lot of places in India as well. So this is like very comparable, and I think it's not a bad deal. However, if you are what I suggest to a lot of people is that, you are going to do your master's just once in your life. So instead of rushing through your master's, you spend more time, you enjoy what UCLA has to offer. UCLA has like a great campus. You can talk to there are like 45,000 people on the campus. You can talk to people from like varying different departments. One of my friends, she was in the engineering department, but this Japanese course, and she was like learning how to watch anime without subtitles and stuff like that. And you should also spend more time doing research in so many great labs at UCLA. So I would obviously recommend people doing the entire 2 years. But if you are really concerned about this cost of attendance, you can do this in like 9 months easy. And taking 3 courses a quarter is like it's no big deal, especially if you are coming from IIIT. Like in IIIT, I feel like the course load was way harder than anything that I've ever seen at UCLA. And this may come as a surprise to people, but I think IIIT offers world-class education, and we should not underestimate how much effort our professors are putting in. This price can seem low to you because UCLA is a public university. However, if you take the example of another top university, CMU, it's like one of the most popular universities at IIIT. It's a private university, so obviously their cost of education is way more than what you would pay in UCLA. I don't know if this is the actual amount. I just went to their website today and I just copied and pasted the figure that I found from in their School of Computer Science. I don't know if there's somebody here who has knowledge. They can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I feel like this is correct. And so you can clearly see there's a huge difference if you do a two-year course in both these universities. You would come out 35 lakh rupees less in debt, or 35 lakh with 35 lakh rupees more in your pocket. And this is a decision that you have to make. This is a very subjective thing, and which is what to choose between public and private universities. And I think right now in the US, there's nothing that I would say differentiates good public and good private universities, because everybody has the same amount of facilities, the same quality of professors. And maybe if you are stuck on a certain aspect of life at CMU that you really like, maybe you like their alumni network, or maybe you like the job opportunities more. Although I don't think that the job opportunity would differ if you go to a public. But that's completely up to you. I would not force you to make a decision. But I would not put words into your mouth. So that's something that you have to decide for yourself. Coming to the cost of living here, so Los Angeles is very expensive to live in, extremely expensive. And UCLA is so we have Hollywood on one side, we have Beverly Hills, you have Malibu, you have Santa Monica, you have airport, and in the middle of everything you have Westwood, which is where UCLA is. So it's kind of a very posh area, and the rent is extremely high. So right now I live in a studio and I pay almost 1.2 lakh rupees a month as my rent, which is kind of expensive, and it kind of blows the mind of a lot of people. But I think if you're living in LA, that's the price to pay. So if you are getting some discount on your tuition, you're paying more for your rent. Obviously, a lot of Indian students, they get a studio and they share it with 2 people, or they take a 2-bedroom house and they share it with 5 people, 6 people. So the rent is $500 to $600 to $700, depending upon what your living arrangement is. But for me, I'm fortunate enough to be in a top lab. My advisor is a very well renowned person in the area, and he's able to get a lot of funding, and he is also very generous in distributing this funding. So since I'm in a top lab, I'm in a top institution in the world, so I'm very fortunate. And I think a lot of people are not this fortunate, but my stipend is enough to cover all of this and live really comfortably. So I have no problems with this. However, even if you're not in a top lab, there are certain ways in which you can fund your education, especially if you're in a public university. And let's talk about that. Also, PhDs in most places are fully funded. So if you have a PhD in any top 100, top 200 university in the world, it's always fully funded. So you don't have to worry. So they will give you enough money. They'll firstly cover your tuition, and then they'll give you enough money that you can pay your rent, you can live, and you can buy food, you can. You would be comfortable in a lot of places. That's the point. Next thing is that a lot of students, even TAships and GSR. So GSR is a graduate student researcher. It's kind of the equivalent position to a research assistant. And TAships, obviously, you are well aware of. So you basically assist professors in their courses. You take these discussion sessions. You kind of help with exams, quizzes, all that stuff. In UCLA, you have another position called a reader. So a reader is kind of a more chill job. In this, you don't have to directly interact with students, but you have to grade homeworks, grade assignments, and then you get paid for that. So if you are in UCLA and this is what roughly you are paying, for a lot of master students, if you can get a good TA or if you can get a good GSR, this entire thing is zero. So this entire thing will be paid for. So you can stay here for 2 years and you are basically paying nothing for your masters. And so in UCLA, we have two levels of TAships. One is, I think, 25%, and one is 49%. So if you are 25%, they pay a part of your fee, and they also give you like $1,000 or something. Whereas if you are on 49%, they pay you, I think, your entire fee, and they also give 2,000 or 2,200, 300, something like that. I'm not sure. And so if you manage to get a TAship in some place, then in like any public universities, like my friend Anam, who's on this call, and I have like other friends from University of Maryland, which is also a top tier public university. They're also they basically had like the whole thing funded as long as they were TAing. So being able to find a research lab and being able to do this TAship would be great, and you would basically just finish your masters with nothing. Whereas if you are in a private university, I'm not sure like how easy it is to find a good TA in CMU or in like other places like Stanford and all. So it's kind of a dicey situation. So you are basically like, if you go to a private university, it's not always sure that you'll be able to fund your masters, at least, because masters are kind of cash cows for these private universities, and they would obviously be more interested in you paying the complete fee, especially since you're a international student. So it's kind of difficult to get your education fully funded in private universities. But if you are in a public university, it's I would say it's very easy. You have to actively try not to get a TAship, because even at the end of the season, we get like so many emails that, we need TA for this class, that class, and that class. So even if you can't fund your entire master, you can at least fund a large portion of it. So you should be like fairly comfortable if you do a TAship or a GSR. Next thing I want to talk about is internships. So if you get an intern in like these top tech companies in the Silicon Valley, you can basically get this whole amount in like 3 months. So top companies pay an obscene amount of money. Like, you would be surprised how much money some of the people who do internships get. And but there's obviously this thing that, like personally for me, I stayed back both the summers because I'm like more interested, or I give more importance to the research that I'm able to do in my lab during this time than going for an internship. Obviously, internship pays well, but if you are comfortable in your situation, I think for at least for PhD students, some professors would say that, kind of you can. Although my advisor is very open. If you want to do an internship, you can do an internship. But in a lot of cases, it's better to stay back in the lab, at least for your initial years, and do some research in the summer, because you're already busy with coursework and all these things, and that's kind of a challenge. So yes, internships are a great way, and with like TAships and internships, it's very easy to fund your entire education if you are in a public university. And public is the key word. You have to apply to a lot of public universities, because right now, like, public universities are very well ranked. I don't think that there will be any difference in the job opportunities you'll get, regardless if you go to private or public universities. Maybe there's like some prestige issue that you have, but apart from that, I would strongly recommend public universities. But as I said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I think it's a very subjective decision, and you have to make it on your own. Now coming to let's talk about IIIT a bit. So a lot of students I have seen, my juniors, my seniors, they fail to take advantage of what IIIT has to offer. So in my case, my entire batch was like 150 students, and there were research opportunities everywhere. And we had basically these resources just going unused, because there's like not enough people to either like contribute to projects or take advantage of all the incredible computing infrastructure or like the library resources that we have. Right now, obviously, like the population of students has increased, but I think we still have a world-class research infrastructure. Like the kind of research I used to do with IIIT, I think it's on par with the research that I do at UCLA. And one important factor here is obviously that in universities like UCLA, your lab obviously has like way more funding. But I think if you discount for funding, a lot of labs in IIIT come up with really top-class research, and the research and papers from IIIT are making their mark all over the world. Like, labs from IIIT are like, now people know these labs in like multiple universities, and if you are like in one of these top labs at IIIT, you have a very easy chance of getting into top PhD, top master's programs. So you have to like take advantage of this. And luckily, IIIT has the whole undergrad system is built around research. You can get, I think in my time, up to 20 credits for doing research. 20 credits was like one full semester of research, and this would count towards your degree, and the grades would count, and everything would count. And this personally, I found this the most amazing thing. I don't think any undergraduate university in India at that time was as good and as proactive about research. And one one thing which is very, very unique and which is very refreshing about IIIT is that in IIIT, professors allow undergraduate students to lead projects. And I don't think this exists in any other university in India where they follow this hierarchical pattern that, a PhD student is the lead, and no matter what you do, the PhD is always the first author, the second author. Whereas in IIIT, you can do whatever you want to do and you get full credit for it. And this is like an amazing thing. And I think we should thank our professors enough for this. Like, we cannot thank them enough for setting up a culture as good as this. Finally, I cannot emphasize this enough, you have to spend some time to build personal connections with three professors. Three professors in IIIT should see your face, and they should say, okay, this guy, okay, Akash, or like whatever your name is. And they should know you personally, they should at least know you beyond this course. They should know that. So if you write an email that, professor, I took your class, I got an A. So now all he knows with you is this A grade. He does not remember what you did for your project. He does not remember what else you did. He does not remember how you interacted with him. Nothing. But if you have a little bit of personal connection with these professors, you would have an amazing chance of getting a great LOR out of them. And LORs make a huge difference. I cannot emphasize on this enough. Like, you have to try very hard to get good LORs. And if you have good LORs, your whole application is like on a different level. A lot of you would be interested in what I did to apply for IIIT. So honestly, as from the attendance whole thing, you can see that for the first 2 years of my undergrad, I was just like chilling with my friends. I used to sleep early, sleep late, miss classes, go out, play a lot of video games. And I was not like the most sincere students. I was still doing okay in terms of grades, but I was not like the most sincere student you would ever see. And at that point, I never envisioned myself going into this area. It just so happened that I had this, I thought that I should take advantage of IIIT's research infrastructure, and I just began looking for labs in IIIT, and I found an amazing lab. I was I was in Professor Shobha Sundaram's lab. I don't know if she's in the EC department, and she's amazing. The work that she does is awesome. She has very high integrity and very hardworking lady. And I just got into her lab and I started working. And within the first semester of working with her, I was able to get a paper in a top tier conference on radar systems. And this was at the end of my 5th semester. And when I got this paper, a lot of people told me, now you have a paper and you enjoy research, obviously. If you apply for PhD programs, you have a very high chance of getting in, because not a lot of people are able to get these top tier publications. And then it was at that moment I started taking it sincerely, and I worked hard in my 6th and 7th semesters to kind of increase my grades. So my grades in my 6th and 7th semesters were very, very high. I spent a lot of time in kind of increasing my overall CGPA. And I also I was also able to publish another paper in the top radar conference, and I got a journal paper as well. So when I applied for this PhD, I had 3 very good quality papers. And I think these 3 very good quality papers and I got LORs from 3 professors who knew me really well, really, really well. And I think these 2 factors combined, and that propelled my application to a whole different level. And then I wrote my SOP, and I basically showed my SOP to everybody who was, so all my letter writers, all the 3 professors, they looked at my SOP, they gave me their comments, their feedback. I changed my SOP. Then I went to, I think Professor Rekha Shauri. She used to teach the communication course in first year. I don't know if she's still there, but she also gave me a lot of positive feedback on my SOP. So my SOP took the most time. And I think overall, I feel like spending a lot of times in these things rather than romanticizing GRE scores helped me and made me successful in my applications. And I would recommend the same for everybody else. Finally, the reputation of IIIT is growing at an incredible pace. So, when I applied for UCLA, they used to literally show, when you apply, they say, okay, what's your undergraduate university? So they literally had Indraprastha University there, but they didn't have IIIT-Delhi, which I found was mind-blowing. So for IIIT-Delhi, our students, we used to have to go at the bottom and choose other educational institution in India, and then write the name manually ourselves and then apply. So basically, IIIT-Delhi was not even considered important enough to have a separate entry for itself. And I applied to 10 universities, and I think in 2 or 3 places IIIT-Delhi hadn't had the entry for it, but I think in a majority of places in those days, IIIT Delhi did not have an entry. Now I hear that in a lot of universities, IIIT Delhi, the name is recognized, and it's much easier to apply, because back in the day, you used to like just go at the bottom, select other educational institution in India, and write the name manually yourself, write the address, and then fill out the form, and it used to take like extra like 5 minutes. And this is obviously thanks to our alumni. I think our alumni is now everywhere in the world, like in Europe, in the US, and like we have a very, very active alumni group in the Silicon Valley. So now the chances of you getting internships, fellowships, or like accepted in a university is exponentially high. And I think for me also, I also benefited from the fact that before me, two or three students from IIIT Delhi had made it to UCLA, and they did like really well in their academics and everything else, and which kind of propelled the reputation. And I think for you guys, it's going to be amazing, because by the time you guys graduate, our alumni would now have like set its fingerprint in almost all top universities in the world. So that's kind of great. And I think I'm not jealous, but I think it's really easy for you guys now. Not really easy, obviously it's a tough process, I'm joking, but it's much easier than before. Also, if you really care about reputation, then you can work with professors who are well known in their field. So there are like a lot of labs in IIIT Delhi, a lot of professors who are very well known in like the areas that they work on. Obviously, I don't want to take names. I don't want to like name names of professors so that like everybody just goes to like Professor X or Professor Y. But there are like a lot of professors who are like very well recognized in their areas. And if you are from the lab, so PhD decisions are basically like everybody. Professors look at your application individually rather than looking at like a whole committee looking at. So they look at application, they say, okay, I like this guy, I don't like him, I like her, I don't like her, kind of thing. And so if you are from these labs from these well-known professors, you have a very high chance of getting accepted. And as I said again, admissions in US universities are very subjective. So for example, if I apply 10 times to UCLA, I would probably get accepted 8 times, but there are 2 times with like some weird combination of events, I would get rejected. So since there's like no scores, like no hard and fast rules regarding scores, it's very difficult to judge how your application is going to be, because it also depends upon the mood of the person who's reading your application. Your application is kind of read on like multiple levels. So like some grad students would read your application, some bureaucratic level people would read your application, then professors would read your application, then admission committees would read your applications. And so it's a whole complex process, and on any level, anything can go wrong. So there's like no hard and fast rule. But if you do what I said, like if you kind of do everything, if you play your cards right, you have a very high probability of getting in. Finally, since like this, I get a lot of requests on LinkedIn from a lot of students in IIIT Delhi. And there are these 2 buzzwords that everybody has on their LinkedIn profile. I mean, like you can raise your hand in your room if you have these buzzwords under your LinkedIn. So for some reason, everybody at IIIT Delhi and a lot of universities in India is an ML, AI, DL enthusiast, or they are an NLP enthusiast. And I do not know what this word means. I honestly do not know. Like people say that, hey, I want to work on ML, AI, deep learning. I want to work on NLP. And literally, they put this on their SOP and they talk about this and ML, AI, NLP, ML, AI, DL, ML, AI, NLP on their SOP for like 2 paragraphs. And it basically means nothing. Like everybody is working on ML, AI and deep learning right now. I know people from mechanical engineering, they are doing ML, AI. People from biostats, ML, AI. People from medical areas, ML, AI. People who do chip designing are using ML and AI. So what do you want to work on ML and AI? ML and AI, if you are saying that you want to work on ML and AI, that means that you want to work on the mathematical aspect of ML and AI, which means that you are going to contribute to new architectures, you're going to contribute to new algorithms and stuff like that. Whereas I would say half of the people who use these buzzwords do not even know what the math underlying these things is. They cannot like solve, like formulate these things mathematically, and yet they love to use these buzzwords all the time. So I mean, you have to, and you know, in a lot of, like especially in computer science departments in a lot of top universities, like 70 to 80% of all the master students or PhD students who apply, they say that we want to work in ML, AI, DL. But so now you are competing with great, amazing students all over the world. Everybody wants to work in ML, AI, DL, and the assumption is that you want to work on the mathematical algorithm aspect of it. Whereas when I talk to a lot of people who send me their resumes for review and stuff like that, they tell me that they want to use ML, AI, NLP as tools. So so essentially it's like saying that if you want to build a house, you would tell me that you want to build a house. You won't say that I want to work on this brick, because that working on this brick means nothing. So same with MLAI. MLAI is a tool that can help you solve problems. So you have to talk more about the problems that if you don't, unless you are like super into the maths of MLAI, you want to improve these algorithms, the architectures and stuff like that, talk about those things. But if you want to use them as tools, talk about the problems. So you want to basically say, I want to use NLP, natural language processing, to reduce the issue of fake news on social media. Now that's a valid problem. It's a very important practical issue, and it's like a hot topic research issue right in these days, especially with the elections coming up. So people would be interested in. Then you go on the next two paragraphs and you say how you envision these things to play out in real life, like what you want to do, what you have read, any interesting papers, and how those things will apply to this area. Or if you want to use, like, you would say, okay, I want to use deep learning for autonomous driving. So now you have a problem, autonomous driving, which is again a very important and a very hot topic issue. And then you can go about the next two or three paragraphs talking about these things. But the problem again is that people just use these buzzwords. It's on your LinkedIn, it's on your resume, and it does not mean anything. It's just like, what do you mean you are an enthusiastic? Even the reporters who write about AI, they are enthusiastic. They are enthusiastic about AI. Everybody's enthusiastic. Like anybody who uses a phone is an enthusiast. So this really does not mean anything. And people just throw these buzzwords thinking that people would be impressed. But no, right now, everybody is using these buzzwords, and they do not make your a profile or your application stand different from others. So if you have this on your LinkedIn, I would suggest you change it to something more straightforward, to the point, that has some certain meaning to it. Finally, you should, when you're doing this whole applying for higher studies, this whole thing is a very stressful process, and you should work in groups. I don't know, I found in IIIT-Delhi the fact that a lot of people do not share what they are doing with others. They they hide. They will not tell their peers what they want to work, they are working on. Really, they'll misdirect people. And this used to happen a lot in my batch, and people were not really upfront about, like, if somebody was applying for higher studies, sometimes they would not even tell you they're applying for higher studies. Whereas in my case, I had my friends, I had Anam, and we used to, always go back and forth about what we want to do, our application, stuff like that. And this greatly helped us, because both of us got in. And a lot of people who used to do these cheap tactics, they were not as successful as they could have been if they had the right support system around them. And I don't know why this is in IIIT-Delhi, but I would strongly recommend you to work in groups. Second thing is, don't give in to peer pressure. A lot of students would come to you and they say, you need to get this score in GRE, this CGPA, or you have to have this project to get in. No, that's all like bogus information. Don't think about what others think. Just have your goal in mind and just work towards it. Thirdly, don't take advice from people who have not gone through this whole process themselves. So you'll find some XYZ random person on YouTube just yapping about GRE and TOEFL, and that guy has never even had an education in a top tier university in India. Forget about others. And he'll say, you need 338 in GRE, you need a CGPA of 9.9, you need a project on machine learning to get successful. No, that's wrong. Which brings me to my final point, which is, don't be afraid to reach out to your seniors. Because I reached out to a bunch of my seniors, half of them ignored my messages, half of them maybe 25% of them gave some sort of reply, but 25% of them kind of gave me more positive feedback. And if somebody reaches out to me with their resume, I at least give it a look, especially if you're from IIIT-Delhi. A lot of people from other universities also reach out to me. If I have time, I look into them. But if I'm from IIIT-Delhi and you send me your resume and your stuff, unless I'm obviously overburdened with work, or I have thousands of things resumes to review, I usually review SOPs and resumes. And I think my friend Anam also does this. So if you can, don't be afraid to reach out to your seniors. And if you reach out to us, we'll at least give it 5 minutes, and we can give you some very positive feedback. So don't pay heed to advice from people who have no idea what they're talking about. Just talk to your seniors. And right now, IIIT-Delhi has a very rich alumni network of people who have done very well in higher studies. So yeah, that's something that you have to take advantage of now. So that's the conclusion of my talk. And now I would like to hear more from you guys. I want to hear your questions, and I hope I can answer some of them in the time that I have left. So thank you, guys.
Great talk, Akashdeep. So there are few questions in the chat box. Let me read you for you. Is TOEFL more important than GRE score?
Uh, TOEFL, for your admission, TOEFL is like a filter. So basically, what TOEFL does is that TOEFL shows people that you know how to speak English. That's it. That's the entire role of TOEFL. And so so TOEFL is kind of a filter. So if you have like above a certain threshold of score in TOEFL, that's it. Then they look at your application. So TOEFL, if you do poorly in your TOEFL, your application would not even be read. So I don't know how should I say if it's like more important than your GRE score, but I would for sure say that you need like above a certain threshold score on your TOEFL to do well.
So next question, there is a question from Rohan. Is it better if the LORs are only from professor, or say like two LORs from professor and one from manager during job?
So for your PhD, PhD is an academic degree, and people kind of prefer what other professors have to say about you. But if you have only two good LORs from professors, and you don't have a third great LOR from a professor, then for sure, if you think that your manager would give you an amazing LOR, then like by all means ask your manager for an LOR. There's like nothing wrong with it. But obviously, I would prefer that you have like three great LORs from your professors.
Also, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So yeah, thanks for answering my question. Like one more thing, does the like professors research like whenever the universities are reviewing you, do they also do a research on the professor who's writing the LOR, or do they just check on what the professor has written?
So a lot of professors in top universities, they don't have this much time. Like we overestimate how much they can do. So they would probably, so they look at the LOR, then say, okay, I know this, I have heard this name somewhere. So obviously the value of the LOR is more, but mostly they kind of look at what's the content of the LOR. So even if a professor is not well known, but the professor has said great things about you, it's a plus on the side of your application. So you don't have to worry about it.
So next question, Rupal has asked, are these scholarship for finding our higher studies GPA based?
Scholarships are again very subjective. As I said, there can be like two universities like IIIT-Delhi and maybe like some Timbuktu University, and Timbuktu University gives like 10 CGPA to everybody, whereas IIIT-Delhi gives like 8 CGPA if you work really hard. So I don't think anybody, any fellowship or any admissions committee would give like a very blind preference to your GPA. So your high GPA is obviously great. Having a good rank in your university is great, but I would not say that having a GPA is the absolute end all be all to this thing.
So Kanopriya has asked, does doing honors help in MS application? So like IIIT has honors program along with during BTech.
I did an honors. I don't think it has any effect. I don't think so.
Okay. And Setu has asked, if I do PhD, do I need to pay for master or can I skip it?
So, for example, like I got admission to direct PhD from UCLA from IIIT-Delhi after I'm undergrad, but in UCLA, my department actually forces you to do a master's before you can start your PhD kind of thing. So I basically started my PhD and my master's in parallel. So both my degrees are from 2018 to whenever I do it, and they pay for the whole thing. You don't have to pay for anything. If you are in a PhD program, whatever the requirements are, they'll pay for it. And in a lot of universities, they allow you to skip the master's degree.
So Neha has asked, is there a difference in terms of job opportunities based on masters with thesis and M engineering?
I'm not really sure because I have not been in the job market yet. But I mean, like there are like some of my friends in the chat. Like I see Ishita, Vahini, Anam, all three of them are doing jobs in US right now, so they can probably answer your questions better. You should just like get a hold of them and you can ask them these questions.
Okay, thanks. I also have one more question. Do you think the current scenario will affect PhD admissions and master's admissions differently? Like, because there are a fixed number of seats for master's applicants, and if people are deferring to next year, then probably, do you think the chances of either of them are different this year?
That's a great question, Neha. And actually, I was discussing this with my advisor on Friday. And as it turns out that this year all the universities, they gave like more like they admitted more people because they thought a year. So next year the number of seats would maybe less. Like obviously I don't quote me on this, I'm not sure, but I and a lot of people expect the number of admissions to be less because a lot of people have deferred to next year now.
Yes, so there'll be less for masters, right? Or
Less
is
for
it?
masters, and this could be less for PhD as well. I'm not really sure because I'm obviously like UCLA would not share their statistics with me, but like
So does this also affect the funding which professors are getting right now for research? COVID-19 impacted the funding.
So he writes grants, and those grants are funded for like 5 years. So most of the grants that we have not been affected. Fingers crossed right now, and I hope none of the academic grants are affected because then that would greatly impact my experience and a lot of experience, like experiences of a lot of students doing PhD. So far I've not heard any issues with funding, but there may be a lot. But I'm not really sure. It's a
Also, just one more question. So, for masters and for PhD, even when you're applying for jobs and internships, is the process a bit different, or how do you go about it? How different is it from in India, and how difficult is it?
So in India, everybody just wants your, like everybody expects the university to get you a job. So everybody's like, the placement cell did not get me a job, or it's the responsibility of the placement cell to get me placed and whatnot. Whereas in the US, it's understood that the job of a university is to give you good education and to make you capable of finding a job yourself. So a lot of so there are obviously career fairs here where you go, you give your resume and you talk to recruiters, but it's not like the campus placement process in India. So in the US, it mostly depends upon how well you can how persistent you are. So you basically have to apply to like hundreds of companies on their job websites. You have to like talk to people on LinkedIn, and if you just like get hold of recruiters and keep sending them emails. So I've heard people apply to like maybe hundreds of like openings and then get like maybe 10 interviews. So I would not say it's more difficult than in India, but it's different.
Okay, so basically you need to be for it as soon as possible.
Right.
If you're
exactly.
into getting a job.
Yeah.
I had one last question. So, so when you go straight for PhD after your BTech and you get your master's degree in between, so it's not a very nice thing to do. But say you want to drop out after your master's, or you feel like that's where you would. Do you have the option of doing that if you're very confused?
Neha, actually, a lot of students do this. A lot of students just drop out of after their masters. Sometimes, obviously, you start your PhD and then you think that the PhD is not for you, and then it's. But if you go with the feeling that I'll just do a master's and I would just get a free ride for my master's and I would then drop out of the master's, then it kind of like brings a bad impression on your university. So obviously you are set, you'll do your job, whatever, but then the reputation of your university would go. Then professor would say that people from this university are always like taking advantage of us. And
yeah, I just wanted to ask if it's like if it's some universities are fine with like the
every university is fine.
if
If you want to drop after your masters, nobody will stop you. Nobody will stop you. Like you can drop out. This is not like a slavery. Like you're not slave to anybody. You can like do whatever you want. You can drop out the first semester, second semester, last semester, whatever. Nobody can stop you. It's just that it's awkward with your advisor, like your student advising you, like why I'm dropping out and all these things. Some people even do not say that. It's like they vanish.
Okay. Thanks.
So Akash, Shreya has asked, can you brief her about the PhD program structure and how to choose an advisor for that?
So basically, like the whole PhD program structure is, it differs from university to university, but mostly it's like you have basically three milestones. One is called, in UCLA, one is called the preliminary examination or prelims. So in prelims, you basically get 6 professors from the entire department. You don't know which 6. And then those professors can individually interview you for 25 minutes each. And you have to pass those interviews. And they can ask you anything that they want, be anything, absolutely anything. And if you if you're not able to, if you fail like more than one professor, then you basically fail your prelims, and you get like 2 attempts to pass your prelims. If you don't pass your prelims, then you get kicked out of the program. Then the second milestone is called your orals. So in orals, you finish all your coursework, and then you come up with a proposal for your thesis. So you say, okay, this is the problem that I have identified, and this is what I want to work on for the rest of my PhD. And then you have an oral committee, and they decide if your problem is interesting enough. And the third milestone is obviously your thesis defense, in which you present solutions to the problem that you have posed, and then you are done with your PhD. If you want to discuss more about the whole structure, then this talk, I have a lot of things to say about the structure in like a lot of universities, so this talk would easily last like 2 hours. So.
Okay, and Chirag has asked, is it necessary to have a 9 GPA, or someone with a low GPA can still get through and obtain scholarship?
People with low GPAs who have done really interesting projects actually do well, because there's like one professor, he's not my advisor, but there's like one professor who was interviewing me during my application process, and he told me that he's more interested in what the student does and what ideas he brings to the table rather than looking at their GPA. So just don't think about GPA. So GPA obviously tells people that you can survive this like a very high quality curriculum. So for example, if you have a 9 from IIT or IIIT, that means that you can survive the curriculum of any top university in the world, and that's it. That's the only need of GPA, and that's how they judge you. So you have to have. So if you are doing a PhD programs, obviously some professors can be biased. They would say, okay, this guy has a 6, so I don't know, they'll reject. But some professors are very open, so that's why you have to apply to more universities to increase your chances.
Ayushi is asking.
One more question.
Yep.
Sure.
So I was asking, so for PhD programs, you said that research experience is necessary almost. So does it? So when I'm writing my application for PhD, do I need to explicitly mention the area I'm interested to work in, or my research should reflect the area I'm interested to work in? And like when you choose your advisor, is it after you apply for your for the program, or so then how relevant is the research that you've done previously for the selection or the advisor?
So your problem could be anything, as professors are usually looking for the components in your problem. So for example, my research was mostly in radar systems, but now I work on user privacy, I work on Internet of Things, I work on HCI. And basically my advisor looked at my problem and he said, in my problem, I had a hardware component, I had a software signal processing algorithm component, I had a user interface component. So basically all these 3 components are common across what I'm working on right now. So your research projects should depict your strengths. So what your strengths are, how well you can formalize problems, how well you can come up with interesting out-of-the-box solutions, how well you can ideate and stuff like that. So I would say that, and you don't have to explicitly mention that I want to work on X, but as I said, you have to not like give into these buzzwords, and you should be like, you can say talk about like 3 or 4 areas that you are roughly interested in, and these can be broad areas, but the problems have to be kind of practical and like something that people can relate with. So if you say ML enthusiast, it does not mean anything in the real world. But if you say I want to use ML to solve some medical problem, then that's a more interesting thing.
So it should be more problem-oriented, the problems that you're interested to solve.
Yes, what things, and also you should talk about your skills. So like I said, like in my project, I talk about the 3 components of my project, and similarly, and then I talk about the problems that I'm interested in solving. And
so during the application, you mentioned the professors you're
when you apply to a lot of universities give you the option to choose professors. They basically ask you to select like 5 professors or 2 professors that you want to read your application. And in those cases, you can do this tricks, which is like a trick which is like at the end, last paragraph of my SOP, I always used to write about these professors and all their work. So I would say, okay, I read this paper from this professor, and this is something that I'm also interested in pursuing. Or I went to the website of this professor and I saw this thing and I'm interested in working on this and stuff like that. So you can be creative about it.
So Piyush is asking, what's the right time to ask the professor for LOR? So like working under them, or should we ask LOR right at that point?
So personally, whenever the professor is at a good mood, is in a good mood with you. So let's say that you're working on some problem and you came up with an amazing solution, and your professor's like he says, great job, Piyush. And at that moment you say, professor, I want to apply for higher education, and at some point I'll ask you for an LOR. And then so you have to kind of prepare professors. You have to kind of like always tell them, listen, I'm in my second year, but next year I'm going to bother you for LORs. So you have to prepare them mentally. So so whenever you can begin this discussion, you should always like just bring this up, like LOR, because they need to know in their head. And once you tell them you want an LOR, then they'll start collecting all these good things that you have been in your head. So then they have like a brief idea, some abstract understanding of who you are, what you want to do, and it's much easier for them to write if they already know it.
So Ayushi is asking how to mitigate the problem of not having a third LOR.
So not having, so if you have a very strong 1 or 2 LORs, then I'm sure an average third LOR would do. But then you have to go on your like have a very strong SOP, and you have to like talk about. So then you have to basically think, okay, what these professors are writing about, and if you think that they are missing out on something, that you have to write that yourself in your SOP. So that's kind of like you basically pat yourself on your back, and you're like, I did this. So there's like no clear solution to this.
Right. One more thing, like during this current situation, this pandemic thing, is it better to apply to colleges in US or like Europe or somewhere else would be better because of the visa situations and everything?
I mean, I don't know. That's a very political question, and honestly, I think Europe has some great universities, no doubt, but unless you have if you have studied in the US, you have you have higher chances of getting a job or getting visas here. So I would strongly suggest people to apply to US. But I don't see why this pandemic situation would deter people from applying to US. Obviously, there are visa issues right now, but I don't see them continuing till next year. So right now, nobody's coming here. So whatever, if you're accepted, you're most likely doing an online course for like at least a year. But after that, I think US and India currently have a good enough relationship, and I don't see these visa issues extending beyond a certain point, because they are फिर तो मैं भी नहीं आ पाऊंगा.
Right. And do you think it's better to apply for a master's just right out of college, or is it better to go in the industry for years, like a year or two, and then come back to doing your master's?
So this is a great question, and so initially I was of the view that like for me personally, if you do a job, so in a job you earn really well and you have a good lifestyle, and then coming back to a PhD or master's and living on the edge is kind of difficult for me. And for me, I realized that if I stopped studying, if I stopped going to classes at some point, then for me it was going to be very difficult to come back. But some people are able to do it effortlessly, so it's a subjective problem. However, I was recently working on a project with one of my friends, and he did his undergrad till 2017, and he took a he went and he worked at NASA for 2 years, and then now he came back this year for his master's, and he had a lot of great experiences. Like he had this whole he was able to think of these ideas really quickly, and I really enjoyed working with him. So I mean, if you have a worthwhile job lined up, then for sure you can go there, and it would give you like a lot of experience. But I think right now, with what I see around me, a lot of people prefer to do masters or PhD directly after the undergrad. Like nobody is waiting, because if you are like 29, 30 and you are doing your PhD, then you probably have like parental pressure to get married or like start a family, stuff like that, and it's not very easy to focus on your education at that point.
Okay, thanks. And just one more thing, like I'm in my 4th year right now, and I'm planning, like I'm thinking of applying to a master's somewhere. So is it too late to be asking, like working with professors and going for BTPs or IPs or things like that?
So it's never too late. Some of my friends even went to professors after finishing their education. So they basically, one of my friends, I think he was probably on this talk, I don't know if he's still there, but he and one of my other friends, they started mailing professors after doing job for a year, and they said, you know, we can work with you on this project, and can you give us an LOR and stuff like that. So it's never too late. If you have good relationships with professors, they would be happy to give you an LOR, and you can definitely go for a job outside, do a job for a year, and then come back. So it's never too late. You can start right now. You can do a BTP even in your last or in your second last semester. It obviously will take a lot of effort, or you can like stay back for the summer term, and then you can do more on your BTP. But I would suggest like you do a BTP, because your BTP advisor would be able to give you a great LOR.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Tanisha, I had a question. Does the evaluation committee value long-term research experience in a particular field, even if there is no tangible output yet? Yeah, in terms of paper or journals.
You know, in your SOP, if you talk about your successes, but you also talk about your failures. So you would say, you know, I spent 6 months on this. I was not able to get a good result, but this is what I learned. So if you list out what you have learned, it brings a different dimension to your application. So the committee, so if I would read your application, I would say, okay, like Tanisha is more honest than everybody else. So everybody's kind of bragging about things, but Tanisha has a more sober outlook to life, and she's more upfront and honest about all her successes and failures. But she has said that she worked 6 months on this project. She could not get a decent result, but she learned all these things, and that has a lot of impact. And even so if you submit a paper and it gets rejected, you can write about that. You could say, no, I did this, and the reviewers on the publication said that, you know, this was lacking, and then I worked on this, and this paper is again in submission and stuff like that. So you can always be creative about your failures as well on your application. And I think talking about your failures also makes your application very strong. It's not like you'll say, okay, I don't know anything, I just like pray to God like for things to happen or to pass my exams. But it's more like you have to come up, like you have to think about your failures from a very human perspective. Like, you know, yes, I tried hard, but I failed, but I learned all these things.
Right. So, like Aryan has a general doubt. So, is it better to go for fall 2020 or as compared to 21 for the PhD or masters?
I would say 2022 would be better, because 2021 I don't know how many seats would be open. But I obviously you can apply to both. There's like, except like spending 2 lakh, like 1.5 2 lakh rupees on the whole process, I don't think like you lose anything else. So if you have like 2 lakh rupees to burn, you can apply it for both things. But if you want to be more practical, more economic about the whole thing, then yes, I would say fall 22 would be better than fall 21.
Yeah. And one more general question would be like, what should be the safe GPA one should be maintained during his graduation?
Yeah, I think if you get an 8 plus, that's good enough. I think anywhere around 8, like even like, so I know like students who have like between 7 and 8, and they got like great admits. They're like great admits. They went to like good university. So if it's, you know, this is like a very subjective process. It's not like India that you need like 200 out of 320 to get into an IIT. It's not like that, and it becomes, it's a very subjective matter, and depends upon like person to person, university to university, depends upon your luck. So there's like nothing safe, but I would say if you're around 8, you should not worry too much about your GPA. You should be more focused about your projects, your research, your LORs, your SOPs, what you have to spend most of your time on. Obviously, your GPA should be, you should not get like, okay, if you get like C or D grade in your linear algebra class, or in any core courses, then you have a problem, right? But apart from that, you should not like sweat too much about it.
Right. So Chaitanya is asking, does doing masters before PhD saves time? So that is like applying to a master program first and then applying for a PhD program after finishing masters.
Where's this question? Let me see. Chaitanya, no. If you do, you can like if you do a master's and PhD simultaneously, if you just directly go into a PhD program, you can save at least a year. So obviously, in some cases, people go into the master's program, but they start also they join a lab and they start working on their research while they are master's students. with the promise that the advisor will take them for a PhD after they finish their master's. So in that case, they have the same time frame as someone who started their PhD with them. So it would not save any time.
No, so the thing I really wanted to ask was that I'm not quite sure if I really do want to go into PhD and like give away like 5 years of my time and yeah, just go into research and things like that. So that is why I want to like have a different kind of a research experience during my masters, and then again try to apply for PhD if I want to at that time.
Yeah, so that would not say that you'll probably lose time then. So if you go to like A university for your masters, you do 2 years of your masters, and then you go to B university for your PhD. Then now you have to start your PhD from scratch. So you are like now losing 2 university for your masters, and halfway through you realize that you can do a PhD. Then you could probably save a lot of time. So I think by the time you finish your undergrad, there's like this whole question about to save 2 years or not to save. And I think if you are on the fence, then for sure, like do a master's first and see how you like it. I mean, like that's a decision that you have to make. I cannot like make the decision for you.
Yeah, so sure. So I was just asking if it like say at least shaves also a single year or something like that.
If you do a master's before a PhD from a different university, you'll lose 1 or 2 years. Yes.
Okay.
But doing a master before PhD, I don't think will save you time in any condition.
Okay. Thank you.
And one last question I would say. So this I like saved for the last moment. So why somebody should go for PhD? Like why somebody should do PhD?
Multiple reasons. Number one, back in the day in like 2000s, an undergraduate was a sufficient degree. So if you had an undergrad, you can become an engineer and you can have a very successful career. But I think about like 10-15 years ago, people started going to so they saw this route that you can do a master's and you can go into you can start working in the US, or you can do a master's and you have better opportunities in India. Like in India, companies started promoting people who had a master's degree. So more people started doing master's degree, and then it's like kind of a loop. So now companies saw more people doing master's degree, so they started giving more importance to master's degrees. And I think over time now, PhD has become the new master's. I see like the number of PhD students has increased a lot. A lot of people are now doing PhDs than back in the day. Obviously, I don't have any numbers on it. I'm just like, this is like bro science. This is just like my gut feeling. And I think so one reason obviously is that if you want to have a very successful career, then you should do a PhD, and PhD like in general gives you more chances of having a successful career. I saw like some stats somewhere that over the course of your entire life, PhD students earn slightly more than master's students. That's another issue. But most importantly, it's about like what you want to do in life. So for example, at the end of my undergraduate, I realized job, like so I did an internship in a very small company, and in that company, my manager had no technical knowledge, and he used to give me a task and he used to say, Akash, I want it done by day after tomorrow. And basically, I think in his head, he used to think that I would go in front of a computer and I would write, dear computer, please do this task for me. No bugs, please. Thank you. And I press enter and the task is solved. And he used to just give me like, he used to say, oh, like do this, build this mountain in 2 days. And this was like very frustrating. So I thought that, right now I'm not ready for this type of environment. Obviously, I had a bad experience, and some people do not have an experience as bad as this. But also, I really enjoyed the whole process of doing research. So you come up with a problem, and then you try to solve that problem. It has its own like successes, failures, frustrations, and stuff like that. So. And which I really enjoy. So you are like frustrated for 2 months, and then all of a sudden something strikes you, and you have a solution to a problem. And these things are this is what I enjoy. So if you enjoy the whole academic process of solving problems, and PhD gives you this whole freedom, so you can work on a bunch of topics that you like as long as your advisor is okay with it. Whereas if you go for a job, then you are kind of stuck in this pigeonhole that you can obviously switch teams, but that's not the point. The point is that somebody else is telling you what to do and what needs to be done. Whereas in PhD, you can do independent research and you can work independently on projects. And this is something that I enjoy. And you have to find. Then this is like the most important thing. And this is like basically like, I don't want to like sound like too cliche or cringe about it, but you have to like find what the purpose of your life is. So that's like something that you have to decide.
Hello. Just one more thing. Are you saying that after doing a PhD, still people go into the industry to work and they don't stick into research or go into being a professor or doing that?
People who do a PhD, if you do really good PhDs and go into the industry, they get paid like, I will not say the amount, but obviously but if you talk to some people who have done PhDs from top universities and gone to industry, they make an obscene amount of money. Like if I ask you to quote a number, you would not be able to quote that number. So if money is your goal, then a good PhD, like nothing like doing a good PhD from a top university and then going to the industry. PhD degrees, because a lot of problems that industry is solving is also like on the edge. So they are trying to expand what the horizon of knowledge is. So people really value a PhD in these cases.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So one more thing I had. So most of all, I think which you have mentioned in like while applying for, like you need to have strong LORs, you need to have strong SOPs, projects and all. So like ideal case scenario, a person would have all of that, but sometimes it does. Situation is such that you don't. And supposing I'm interested in going for a PhD eventually, and of the choice of colleges that I had chosen, shortlisted for my applications, I got into, say, the ones which were not so high up in my wish list, basically. So I get into a decent enough college, university, and then I want to apply for PhD again after master's, say. So is that a good idea or a bad idea? Like supposingly if chance of dropping another year, how can you make the most of it to actually make your application strong? Because supposingly you graduate, so you may, like, you could obviously work with the same faculty at the university, at IIIT, say, or you could do other stuff. Like, so what are the other ideas that you could probably do to?
So if you do not if you get a decent university, not a very good university, then you can. So obviously then you can think of this whole thing as a like step process. So you did not manage to get like all the way to the top, but you're now somewhere in the middle. Like you are in a decent enough university. So you can now this decent enough university is within the US, and people know about this. No matter, like it could be a state university, but people know about it. So here you have like two options. Either you go for a job. And I would like to emphasize the fact that the quality of job you get in the US is not dependent upon the university you are in. If you are if you are like tenacious about it, if you like apply to thousands of places and you know decent amount of coding, decent amount of all these extra about like these course stuff and like basically job related skills, you can get a very good job from a tier 3 university in the US, and a lot of people actually do that. So when I go to like LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, I'm like, oh, this guy's from this university and he got like such a great job. Wow. And that's because people here value your knowledge and not like these tags of universities or GP and whatnot. And a lot of people who do PhDs in these tier 2, tier 3 universities, even they come up with great research. And if you have like great publications in a PhD, irrespective of where you are from, people respect you. So again, subjective thing, you have to make this decision, like does this tag of UCLA matter to you? If yes, then you can like obviously apply to UCLA after your master's. If you are satisfied with what you have achieved in your current university, you like the atmosphere, like the advisor and all these options, then go ahead and do a PhD in your university. Again, like people here value your knowledge, people here value your skills, people do not value these tags here. Obviously these tags will help you slightly, but it's not, these are not like night and day thing.
Okay. And also, supposingly I'm interested, so the reason I was saying was that supposingly I'm interested in working with a professor who is at a top university. So does it become easier, like, do you get to collaborate on projects? Do you get to work on a project maybe at another university?
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes, you can reach out to professors from any university, in any university in US, and you can just, if you have an interesting problem that is worth somebody's time, they would be very interested in collaborating with you. So you don't have to worry about that.
Even if you're working, even if you are doing a PhD from some other university.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, they'll also be an author on the paper, so they'll also enjoy the citations and all the press and whatever. So if it's an interesting problem, people would be like very interested in working with you.
And even the advisors are supportive of this.
Yeah. Like my advisor is like very supportive of doing collaborations.
Okay.
Hello.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, hi, Akash. So, this is a question from my side. Like, after going for the higher studies, if you come back to India, so what program suits more? Because what I heard is PhD narrow down the opportunities, and in India, it's like if you're more open towards, if you have a broad spectrum of the things, then it's good. So, masters or PhD, if you want to come back to India after higher studies.
People who say a PhD narrows down your options are actually people who have never done a PhD themselves, and these are people like who just like to sit on the fence and speculate. I don't think PhD narrows down your option. PhD gives you a lot more skills in a narrow area of research. But if you are very good in a narrow area of research and that area is very relevant in a lot of other fields, then you can get great jobs. So for like as an example, uh, if you are like very good in like computer vision skill, like if your PhD is on computer vision, and then you can take this skill and you can go to like a whole, like you can basically join like a company that is doing some research on cancer, and then you can help them apply all these CV techniques to microscopy. So I took a course on biomedical imaging, and they are using a lot of skills which are very similar. And a lot of people who do CV, they go and they apply their skills there. Like for example, you read this news about the whole black hole thing. Katie Bowman from I think MIT Stanford. I don't know where she was from, and she applied all these imaging skills to image a black hole. So PhD will give you skills, and if your skills are relevant to a job, you have a wide places that you can work on. Thanks, and then she's from Caltech. Okay. So I think that's like just people who have no idea just say these things. PhD is like more focused in an area, blah blah blah. Don't do whatever you want to do in life. Don't worry about all these things.
Okay, thank you. So, follow-on question on this. So basically, what are the opportunities one get if you're coming back to India? So because most of the people we have seen in India, they're in the academics, and like the research and everything in India is not that much great here. So is there industries in India which are looking for the PhD candidate for higher positions?
Yes, like I mean, first of all, research in India is great. Research in IIIT is great. I don't know why we sell ourselves short. The kind of research you can do in IIIT Delhi is at par with top universities in the US. Like people in IIIT publish to top conferences, top journals, like literally the year round. Like if you subscribe to our Facebook page, so I don't know like, how this
So
this
basically,
whole
Akash, my question was in the R&D departments of the industries. So if you talk about big companies, in the R&D department is not that much from my perspective, is not that much great as compared to the US in the Silicon Valley and everything. So do PhD people get a lot of high research jobs in the industries? I know about the academics, that's very great, but with respect to industries.
People who do PhDs get if you this is like a homework for you. Go to any company that you think is working on the edge of technology, like Tesla, OpenAI, DeepMind, Google Research, Facebook AI Research, and see who's working there. These are like all PhDs. Even in India, you have IBM Research, and you have like so many research labs, and they are hiring PhDs. So I think you have to see this for yourself. People think that if you do PhD, then you can only become a professor. That's wrong. If you do a PhD, you can go into academy, into industry, and you can get very high paying, very relevant, very interesting jobs. So I don't know where this notion is coming from.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For that, I feel Akash, we are not like very much explored that thing, or we didn't get to know about those things. Like mainly we students think of the PhD would eventually lead to enter in only in academia. Maybe like exploration, or maybe I don't know. I think
so. I think the notion there comes from the fact that a lot of us there's like this whole parental pressure, and so like somebody's parents said something, then somebody else's parents said something, somebody else's parents said something, and this whole thing is there's like this whole rumor that spreads. So if you're not, so that's why I'm suggesting you talk to people who have gone through the process themselves. If you're asking some rando dude on the streets about advice, then you are basically like you're losing your half the battle there, because now you're working on the wrong advice. So you have right now IIIT Delhi has amazing alumni everywhere in the world, in every walks of life, like industry, academia, whatnot. So you can reach out to your seniors and you can ask, if you have questions like this, just ask them.
Yeah, right. So if anybody else have any other question, please unmute your mic and you can ask.
Hi, I had one question. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about how is the living situation and how did we handle that? Is it like you just jumped on a plane and went there, landed there and continued? Or that's what I wanted to ask, like how did you manage the living and all those stuff along with carrying on a PhD and the expenses and all that? Not only expenses but other things also, like finding housing, all those. Does the university help you at all, or is it just you are completely on your own?
So university has university housing. But university housing actually caps. So if you live in university, like I live in university housing, so only like one person can live in a room. But the charge of a room is $14-30, which is like about 1,05,000 a month. But Indian people, like maybe a lot of people, even like American people, they basically take a room and like 2 or 3 people live in that room. So that's like kind of cheaper, and it's kind of like 30,000-40,000, 50,000 a month. So what they do is they make so as soon as you get admits, you go to these Facebook groups about admits, and you find links to WhatsApp groups about admits. So there'll be like a UCLA admit 2018 ECE group. You join that group, and then you create these subgroups of people who want to look for housing together, and then you find housing. So but in my case, I just like, luckily I had I was like well funded, so I just took like university housing. I flew in straight, went to my house, and that's it. And I think universities in the US, they'll basically ask you to do a whole course about life in the US, about all these resources. And universities have like amazing amount of support for every walk of life. Whatever problems you have, universities would be more than willing to help you solve it. So don't worry about it.
So Akash, one more question. You said in the between that we can go for 2020 fall. So like we are in the 4th year, so we'll be graduating in 2021. So how do you suggest us to spend one more year doing a research somewhere as a RA or something, or doing a job for 1 year?
Depends. I mean, if you want to get like another paper in IIIT, some lab in IIT, some lab somewhere else. If you want to get the job experience, then get a job and get some experience there. So like it's like something for you to decide. Like I would not like, I don't know, because I didn't do any of these things. So I don't know how much I can help you with that. But I mean, for all hopes and means, like all means, like apply for 2021. Like why? Like unless you have like these financial strains that you only have like you have like applying to higher studies is a very financially intensive process. So it takes like 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees in total, the whole thing, like GRE fee, TOEFL fee, application fee, sending score fee, whatever. So obviously it's not for everybody, but if you have like that amount of money handy with you, then apply for 2021 as well, because it's better that there's like less chance, but the chance it's not like you only have 50% chance. That it's like maybe like you have like 10-20% less chance than before now. And in some cases, even that's not the case.
So I've also seen people who have not like GRE scores or something, like one of my friend. So they got admitted into some university in MS scholarship. So how did this case go where you get basically the reference-based admission to PhD or MS? Do you know anyone from our college?
I have no idea how this whole thing works. So obviously there are universities in the US who just want students to come and pay their full fee. Because international.
No, for example, it was Oulu University in Finland. And
come on, man. I don't know like how that works in Finland, because I've not applied to like any university in Finland. But I think in top tier universities, they are very strict about the requirements.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Akash, I had a question. Like in IIIT-Delhi, like we are offered like very interesting courses, and like I try to attend more of them, and I'm not applying for the IP and like IP approaches. I'm doing a BTP under Vikram sir, but like I'm not applying for IPs, but I'm taking more courses. So like how, like after this talk, I'm more confused on it.
Controversial opinion, but I think an IP or a BTP can teach you way more than a course can teach you, especially if you are working on something worth your time. So I don't know, like you can still take what 38 something, like 34, 38 courses even after doing your BTP, IP, and all these things. So I mean, 34 courses are good enough. Like this is a huge number to take all the courses that you're interested in. I mean, unless
yeah.
unless you feel like every course is an interesting course, then that's like a separate issue. But I do not think you should have a problem trying to find like 2 or 3 courses to skip and do IP and BTP instead.
Like what I'm planning is like I am also planning for the computer security and machine learning NLP, both the courses combined, and also some courses for maths.
So
Like,
basically,
that's why
so you do BTP under one professor, then you do one IP under one professor, you do one IP under another professor. Now you have supervised you individually, personally, and you have a chance of getting great LORs from 3 professors. If you think that you can, like courses would help you more, then fine, go ahead and do more courses. But then I don't know how you plan to get 3 strong LORs. That's the whole thing that I'm saying, that like the whole point of doing more research credits is that then you have a better chance of creating these relationships with professors, and that would help you a lot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that should be the end of questions. Is there anyone else who want to ask something?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Abhinav. I would like to ask, can you hear me? Like,
yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Looking at the present situation with concerning with the the employment status of USA, and like what's your view on that? Like, there's gonna be a lot of change. There's gonna be change with respect to the admission process, where people will be preferring to admit, like they'll be trying to like apply for Germany or Canada more in preference compared to USA. So what's your take on that? Like at the moment, at least. So there's gonna be a lot of changes compared to that, right? So what's your take on that? Like, if I'm gonna apply, I would naturally try to prefer applying to Canada more than USA for the time being. So how do you respond to that? Like, I would like to know your take on this.
So, I mean, given everything, I would have still applied to USA. I would still have preferred USA because if you would go and study in Canada, Canada is a great country to live in. I have been there, like I have family there. But like the amount of technical jobs, and if you go and live in the Silicon Valley, then you'll have a like 1,000 times better technical career than anybody else in anywhere else in the world. So I mean, the whole allure of working in Silicon Valley, living like in these tech hubs in the US, like Seattle, the Bay Area, and places like this is far more. The whole allure is like there's like more attraction to this than to going anywhere in Canada or into Germany. But I think it's subjective. Some people are obviously uncomfortable with what's happening here. For me, I would still like prefer like career prospects over other things. So I would have still preferred applying to the US. But obviously, like, Canada is a great country to live in. They have a good tech industry up and coming. A lot of companies are moving there. So I mean, like over the years, maybe at some point, it would become like a comparable option. But I think right now, if you want to work in the tech industry, if you want to have a great career, a lot of people would still prefer the US.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful.
Hey, I had this question. For the students who currently have an admit, what would you suggest to take the referral for the spring semester or for fall 2021?
I have like no comment about this because obviously I don't know like when would a vaccine be available. If a vaccine is not available like early, then probably spring would also be online. And I would seriously, okay, don't quote me, like don't make a decision off of what I say, but I think the whole attraction of studying in top universities comes from the fact that you get to talk to these, like you get to meet amazing people from across the world. You get like talk to the best minds. And I think it's more than courses. So if you just do online course for like a university, you're missing out on a lot of these experiences. So personally, I would have deferred for a year before coming in here. So I would say that you come in fall 2021, but I think if you are more interested in like doing courseworks early and just like, you know, getting a job early, then like do these online courses and like don't defer at all.
No, my preference is to attend in person, but we have been given an option that if we're not able to come to US in spring, we can defer to fall 2021. So my question was more of that: if we have the option of going in person in spring and or in fall, so what would you prefer? Like, is spring like uh, as we have heard that spring semester, like fall semester is always preferred over the spring semester. So on that basis.
I mean, I don't know where this comes from. The fact, like, where this notion is coming from. The fall semester is preferred more than some spring semester. I understand. Obviously, it comes from the fact that, like, from the is it because of like the jobs, like companies are looking to offer jobs more in the fall than in spring, or I don't like with this. Uh, I mean I don't know, because in my case a lot of people, they end their masters in before the spring and then they still get a good job. They end before fall, they get a good job. So I don't know if like it's the right thing to say that, like, doing a like a I don't know. Basically, I don't know. I have no idea how to prefer a particular semester over the other, but I would just advise you to prefer attending courses in person.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that will be all, Akashdeep. Thanks a lot for joining us and for this amazing talk. And we will make sure that this talk is recorded and made public with all our students. And yeah, very, very, I mean,
Like,
thanks.
thank you everybody for attending. A huge number of students who attended. It's like amazing to see so many people attended and so many people stay like all the way, like what's like 1.5 hours since I started. And if you have
Yeah.
any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Obviously, my website is Akash akash.us, or you can like reach out to me on my email address. Everything is on the website. And if you want to connect, we can like connect on LinkedIn or whatever. So feel free to reach out to me. And thank you so much for doing this talk. I really
Yeah, I
enjoyed
would
it.
also like to thank Anam and Bahini for joining and answering some of the questions as well in chats. So yeah, it was great having you two as well. And thank you so much. And we hope to see you all soon. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
guys. See
Okay.
you.
Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye.